Welcome to Notable Approvals. I am attorney Amanda Shaffer. We have another great case to get to today. Before I do that, I just want to remind you to make sure that you like us and follow us on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and LinkedIn so that you don't miss any more lives. I also want to give a big shout out today to my colleague and friend, Electra Yao, who got me this awesome necklace to spruce up my lives. Thank you, Electra. I will wear it well for you. So today we have a VAWA and adjustment of status case to talk about. The client is a native and citizen of Nigeria. And when he first came to us, he came with his wife and we filed a marriage petition. They seemed to be happily married. Everything's going great. And then about a year, well, after the marriage, things started to change. And if you've seen any of our other notable approvals or any of our Q&A discussions on VAWA, I always talk about this. There's always certain times in a relationship where things start to go wrong with domestic violence, or especially when it comes to an immigrant relationship, filing for a green card, and that has to do with an imbalance of power, which I'll talk about. So after they got married, they did file for the green card, and that's when the wife started to act differently. She kept asking for money, and when my client would be like, I don't have any money to give you, she at one point said, hey, I'm going to go on a family trip with my family. I want you to meet them all to Atlantic City. You have to pay like $200 for your expenses. So he said, okay. He was excited. He gave her the $200, and then there was no trip. And when he tried to ask her about it, when it was clear that there was no trip, she said, well, I'm a U.S. citizen and you have no right to be here. So what are you going to do about it? Excuse me. And which is often a common threat we hear with domestic violence, like, I'm going to get you deported. You know, you can't call the police because you're here illegally, that type of thing. Now, this client did enter with a visitor visa, but had overstayed his visa. So he didn't feel like there was anything he could do about it. So, you know, it kind of continued this way. And then he ended up, you know, he loved her and trusted her, even though, you know, there was some things that should have raised red flags, and in hindsight definitely did for him. So he did open a joint bank account with her. And then he found out when he went to go take out funds that he couldn't take anything out because the account was overdrawn. And he learned that his wife had tried to submit a fake check into the account, like for like a couple $1,000 so she can take out a couple $100, because that usually clears right away. But it got flagged and she got caught, and basically she got banned from that bank and the account got closed. So he was already having problems, but again, he was still pretty scared to do anything about it because he didn't know what his rights were. So then in the summer of like a year or so after they got married, he was in the streets in Newark. He was walking around, and he sees his wife, and she comes up to him and says, I'm hungry. Can I have some money? So they went to the store. He got her some food, and she goes, no, I need more money. And she's like, let's go to the ATM. So he goes to the ATM. He gives her $20. And she says, I need more money. He goes, I don't have any more money to give you. And he's like, I'm just going to go. Because they start fighting. He's like, I'm just going to go. So he turns around to walk home. And all of a sudden, he basically gets jumped and gets maced. And he hears his wife screaming, take his wallet, take his phone. They cut a hole in his pocket. They take his wallet, take his phone. He's left on the street with, you know, maced. Luckily, there was someone who saw it, a cab driver who called 911, and he was treated. But when the ambulance came and they asked him what happened, you know, clearly somebody did something to him, but he was too scared to say that it was his wife because he didn't think anyone would believe him. So he didn't tell them that it was his wife. So no official police report had been filed. He then told us what happened, and we told him 100% you need to call the police. This is a crime. In fact, like you'd be eligible for a crime victim visa if it wasn't your wife for something. This is a very serious physical assault. Like she could have blinded him. And he was very scared after that, understandably. And, you know, especially since she knew where he lived, she disappeared. but he did go to the cops based on our advice. He reported it. They went looking for her and they couldn't find her. I was never updated at the end of the day. I know my client was still hesitant about following up with it because he was still a little afraid, but I think the problem really was finding this woman. So that happens, and then we get the interview notice. Now, we had already told him this qualifies you for VAWA. This is abuse. This is physical abuse. So we started preparing the application, which was a good thing because when we got the interview notice, obviously his wife wasn't going to come, and people always say to me, what do I do in that situation? Do I still go to the interview? Do I not go? Well, generally speaking, it's a better idea to go, especially if you have a legitimate VAWA claim. So I went with him to the interview, and we said to the officer, the wife isn't coming. We're filing for VAWA. They gave us 30 days to file the VAWA application. Now, I've done this a lot of times where I've accompanied someone to an interview who ended up filing for VAWA. You don't always get 30 days. Sometimes you get an open-ended period of time. I've had clients file it up over a year after that the adjustment interview and not have a problem. I've also had them not tell us a deadline, and I've had a client get her green card denied because we didn't file the VAWA within 30 days, even though they told us we could get an extension. So bottom line is, what this teaches you is that if you do have a VAWA case at any point, especially once you've already have something filed, like the marriage petition and the green card, you want to really be on top of it. And I know that's really hard with VAWA cases because part of what you have to do with VAWA is sit down and write your story. And that's very traumatic just to write it out there, although it's also very therapeutic. And there's a lot of different things you have to do. But in a situation like that, we usually don't like to submit it until we have everything. But in a situation like this, if we had to rush, we would want to make sure we at least get it filed, because the downside is you're paying a filing fee again for the green card application, which is a lot. And you can even risk being it used to not be this way, but now lately, last few years, you risk being placed into removal proceedings where you could still apply for VAWA, but now it's going to be more expensive and take longer, and it's stressful and a headache that you don't need. So bottom line is, if you and your spouse are having real trouble, regardless of where you are in your relationship, regardless of where you are in your filings, you really should reach out and talk to someone like an immigration lawyer, a therapist, to find out what your options are, because you really want to get on top of it as soon as you can, because it is hard to deal with, and it will take time to really develop all the evidence that you need. So we were able to file it within the 30 days, and we weren't even given a request for evidence. It was approved, I think, at like a year and a half later. It was taking forever at that time. And he got his green card, which means that he's actually going to be eligible very soon to apply for citizenship, because he only has to wait the 3 years since he got his green card based on VAWA and his wife was a U.S. citizen. So I have a note in my calendar. This is what reminded me of his case, to remind him, hey, it's time to file for citizenship, which is pretty exciting. And yeah, so luckily for this client, everything worked out. But bottom line is, like I said, number one, you want to be on top of these things. But in terms of domestic violence and domestic abuse, try to see the red flags as early as possible. You know, the way his wife was scamming him with, earlier on in the relationship, that should have been a clue. Hopefully, if God forbid you ever had that situation again, he'll notice that. But it's not easy to notice it in your own life. But the more you can learn about it, the more you can share. And the more we tell these stories, the more people are aware of what to look for and what is a red flag in a relationship. So that is all for notable approvals. Thank you again to Electra Yao of the Yao Law Group, fantastic lawyer, for this awesome necklace. And don't forget, like us, follow us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those things, so you don't miss another live. My contact information has been scrolling across the bottom of the screen this whole time. I'm here for you, so feel free to contact me. And if you need any help with domestic violence or domestic abuse, if it is an emergency, you call 911. I don't care what your immigration status is. It does not matter. You have a right to be protected. You have a right to not be abused. If you need any help, you give me a call, but in an emergency, you call 911. There's a national domestic violence hotline in New York, Safe Horizons. I'll put up a few resources as well when I post the video afterwards, so that anyone watching who needs some help can certainly reach out, and I'm here as well. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.